Hello, everyone. My name is Dave Peedy. I am the current board president for Publishing Professionals Network. Thank you so much for joining us today. We're really happy to have Nina Schuyler come and talk with us about AI, obviously a very hot topic these days. And I love that she's going to be focusing on how this can be used positively by writers, but also maybe some of the pitfalls to be on the lookout for. There's a lot of gloom and doom around AI, all things AI, and those are certainly legitimate topics of conversation, but we thought we'd not cover that today and really just talk about how this can be useful for writers. But I think that's also something that everyone in book publishing needs to know about as well. So we thought that this was really appropriate for PPN. For those of you not familiar with PPN, we are an all-volunteer nonprofit. We've been around for more than 50 years. We're very easy to join if you'd like to join us. I think it's $25 a year membership for individuals. And I'm going to just say that we are recording this, and I'll let Nina introduce herself and talk a little bit about why she has come to learn so much about AI in the work that she's done. So I'm going to unpin myself if I can. And
well, thank you so much for inviting me.
Oh, you are so welcome, and thank you for accepting our invitation. I'll let you go ahead and dive in. And just to say, Nina's got a lot to cover, but I think we're probably going to try to do Q&A at the end, just because I think it's going to be hard for Nina to do a presentation and monitor the chat at the same time. So we'll hold off until the end. But yeah, if anybody needs something urgently, feel free to look in the chat, and if it seems appropriate, we'll kind of interrupt.
That'd be great. Yeah. I'm not that good at multitasking. I'm pretty good, but not that good at watching a chat and trying to talk. So how did I get interested in AI? I wrote a novel called Afterword. It came out in May 2023 by Clash Books and Indie Book Press. And it involves a female pioneer in AI who brings back the voice of her deceased husband. I knew nothing about AI. I stumbled into it, first of all, in 2017 when I visited Japan, and they have robots. They have robots at department stores. And you'd walk in and I'd hear a robot say, "Erashaimase," welcome. And then in 2018, I went to an exhibit that in San Francisco that included a robot called Bina 48, and who was speaking in very natural language like a human. And that was kind of the beginning or the spark of the idea of how are they making these computers, essentially a computer neural network, talk like humans. And I did a bunch of research to write the novel. Again, it's out now. You can find it Afterward. And it got me also just curious. And I continued to read everything about AI and play with it as a writer. So I, like Dave acknowledged, I want to acknowledge the looming existential threat that many writers feel right now as the LLMs or large language models become better and more sophisticated. So I think anything we can say at this point will be irrelevant or change within 3 to 4 months or even less. So it's evolving. So what I'm talking about today is where we are now. And I just want to preface that because maybe in a month it will all be different and evolving even more. I know OpenAI, ChatGPT just made it able to speak. So that was a new development. When it first came out, November 2022, it was just writing, right? You'd write something and it would write back. So that's what we're going to talk about today is the input, or what's called the prompt, and the output. And that's what ChatGPT gives you. So I wanted to focus just on writers, but I think it's relevant for copywriters, for anyone that needs a summary of anything. It's really good at summary. So I'm going to show you that in just a minute. So everything, like I said, is driven by prompts, or think of them as commands. They're phrases or questions that you want answered. It's best to think of it as an exchange, a dialogue, maybe as a journalist posing questions to someone. And the more you'll see as I go through this, some of the prompts I use, the more I can give it in terms of putting it in the prompt, the better the response will be. And you'll see sometimes I have to refine it or clarify to make it a better response that it gives me. So I'm working just with the free version. There's ChatGPT 4, which is $20 a month. I'm just playing around with the free version and trying to use it as a tool, not to write for me, but to brainstorm with me, almost as if I hired an editor and it's like, what about this? What about this idea? What about, how would you like this phrase? So let's move on. For brainstorming for summarizing is where I'm going to start. There's 3 areas: summarizing, and then at the sentence level, and then I think at the plot and blog level and research. So the first one I gave it, most writers need to write a synopsis or something of their novel. So I gave it the following prompt, and look how much information I gave it, a lot on my novel. From this novel synopsis, so I want to stop there, I am telling it the form I want it in, or what I'm giving it, a novel synopsis. And I give it the title, Afterword. Write 3 sentences that summarize the plot. This is how much information I can give it in my prompt. I'm still in a prompt form. Pioneer of artificial intelligence, Virginia Sampson rebuilds the voice of her dead lover, Haru, allotting him qualities he once had as her math tutor in Japan. With this voracious appetite for learning, Virginia gives him access to the internet. Haru begins spying on ordinary Chinese citizens, handing over incriminating information to the Chinese government. Alarmed, Virginia frantically rebuilds him, and in the process discovers a terrible secret that shakes her love for him, causing her to face the dilemma of whether to keep him or kill him. I want it pared down to 3 sentences. That was my prompt. From 4, I had 4, I want 3. So I won't read it all, but it does a fine job of, I'll read some of it. And afterward, AI pioneer Virginia Sampson resurrects, so changes the language, her deceased lover, Haru, endowing him with qualities from their shared past as her math tutor in Japan, and granting him access to the vast expanse of the internet. So it does a great job, really. And then I want it pared down to 2 sentences. So it gave me 1 sentence. So I made a note here. It didn't follow the instructions exactly. And this is a reminder to read or edit or refine the prompt or edit whatever it gives you. So here it says, in Afterword, AI pioneer Virginia Sampson revives her deceased lover Haru, giving him access to the internet. But when he starts spying on Chinese citizens for the government, Virginia's frantic efforts to rebuild him unveil a devastating secret. That's new language here. I didn't use that. Forcing her to grapple with the dilemma of whether to keep him or end his existence. So he got rid of the alliteration I had. But that could be a back, cover, the back cover copy, at least something to start with, right? Just like, okay, I've condensed a 229-page novel into 1 sentence. And then I said, pare this down to 7 words so it can be a subject line in an email. And I gave it, so again, I'm giving precise instructions, 7 words now. Where's it going to go? Subject line in an email, so it knows what it's doing, what I want. And I even gave it the tone. The tone should be intriguing. So I'm crunching it all down again. Now I only want 7 words. I'm trying to maybe get an agent excited about it. Love, betrayal, and a dilemma unveiled. And I prompted it again. I said, can you use the abbreviation AI in the subject line sentence? And then it changed it. It output AI love, secrets, betrayal, and dilemma. It's like, okay, that's pretty good. It would fit. Maybe someone would open up that email, right? It's intriguing enough. So you're seeing how it can pare things down to help you summarize and just get kind of this grunt work done. Like, oh no, I have to write this subject matter email, and what is it going to be? So, what about writing a query letter to an agent using the synopsis? So I note again, I say what I'm doing. I'm precise on, I want a query letter. It's going to an agent. And this is what I'm going to give you, synopsis. So the more specific, this is at my end, I have some best practices to use. The more specific that prompt can be, the better the result will be. And then I gave it more precise information. Use 3 sentences and the tone should make someone want to read it. Again, I'm trying to entice an agent to say, yes, send me the full manuscript. So this is what it came up with. Dear agent's name. So it knew at this point, it's got so much data in it now, what a query letter is kind of going to look like. I hope this message finds you well. I am writing to query your interest in representing my novel Afterword, a compelling tale where AI pioneer Virginia Sampson resurrects her deceased lover Haru, imbuing him with qualities from their shared past. As Haru spirals into espionage, Virginia's desperate race to rebuild him unveils a shocking secret, setting the stage for a gripping, so okay, maybe that's to make someone excited about read it, gripping exploration of love, betrayal, and an existential dilemma that will captivate readers. Now, in a query letter, you'd need 2 more paragraphs, but it did a pretty good job in that opening paragraph. Thank you for considering my work. So the other thing I want to say is I'm still building from the first prompt. So if you don't shut down ChatGPT, it's still referring to your original prompt information. So when I put the synopsis of the book in, it's still going back up. So I'm on like prompt 5 right now, using the same information. So as long as you keep that screen open and you keep the conversation going, it knows what to refer to. Okay, then I did it again. Write a letter to a magazine editor pitching Afterword as a book they should review. And then here's all in white is its response. Subject, compelling novel, Afterword, deserves your review. I'm not sure I'd use that as a subject matter, but dear editor, again for a magazine, I hope this message finds you in good spirits. This is all ChatGPT, knowing now I'm in letter form because I told I need a letter. I'm writing to bring your attention to a captivating new novel titled Afterword, penned by, and fill in the name, which I believe would be an excellent addition to your magazine literary review section. And then it summarizes again the novel. And it goes on, thank you for considering, best regards. So it essentially gave me a first draft of a letter to someone. So that could be for your novel, for your magazine article that you want to try to get out there. So brainstorming at the sentence level. So now I'm going to get more nitty gritty here. And let's say you're struggling with headlines. I always have trouble writing a headline or a title. So the prompt here, make this headline more intriguing. So this was the headline actually for a LitHub article that just ran recently. Happy endings redefined. Why there should be more books about breakups. And ChatGPT gave me unveiling the uncharted, rethinking happy endings through the lens of breakups. So I wanted to write a little note. You start with the text you want to improve and state how you want to improve it. So I said, make this more intriguing. It could be make this shorter, make it longer, make the headline more casual, more professional, punchier. I could use, use alliteration. It knows what alliteration is now. Use assonance. So anything in that prompt of what you're looking for. And because, again, it knows what it's referring to, the synopsis at the beginning, or no, this is a new title, I could keep playing with it. I'm not happy with that. I could keep going. So I did. Use only 7 words for the headline. Breakups reimagined, unveiling a new chapter in endings. So that would be like a headline for an article that's all about why we need breakup novels and how they're going to help the world in some way. So you could keep going. I want 5 words for the headline. I only want 2. You can use it for synonyms and antonyms. So I just said, I'm always using the word walk, and I always need a different word. Give me 10 synonyms for walk. and I could have done, give me 50 synonyms for walk. It just goes on, and or antonyms. So if you're using it, as a thesaurus. Here, style. I was playing around with style because, as writers know, as authors know, as it devoured so many books, it now knows a lot of the style of different writers. For example, here it knows the style of Hunter S. Thompson. So I said, add the style to this sentence. So I gave it the sentence. He entered the bar with a dead raccoon wrapped around his neck. And ChatGPT gave me, he swaggered into the bar, a dead raccoon draped casually around his neck, a bizarre yet audacious statement that screamed defiance against the norms of ordinary existence. So again, taking that bare bones, simple sentence and just putting in all this other language, a lot of adjectival information coming into the sentence. Another use of style, my prompt was turn this simple sentence into a complex sentence and add 5 adjectives. So the sentence was, he woke in the morning and he went, actually it's a compound sentence, and he went outside to feed the horses. So I wanted it to turn it into a complex sentence, which it did not do. Its first iteration, in the tranquil morning light, he roused from slumber, gradually awakening to the world around him, period. Stepping outside into the crisp, invigorating air, he consciously embarked on the daily ritual of feeding the patiently waiting horses, their expectant eyes reflecting a quiet anticipation. So as a writer, maybe you're stuck on a sentence, you've revised it, you're not happy with it, it's not getting to what you want it to be. You're stuck on adjectives, and using this kind of as a brainstorming tool. Maybe you like tranquil, maybe that's the right tone, or crisp and invigorating air. So loading up your adjectives as it's done here. And again, it didn't do what I wanted to do. So a reminder that you want to read the output. And I refined the prompt. I said, try it again using a dependent clause. So this time it did it. Here's the dependent clause, as the first rays of dawn gently bathed the landscape. So note, the other interesting thing that ChatGPT does is it doesn't just reproduce what it did before. So now instead of a tranquil morning light, we have gently, first rays of dawn, gently. So it'll say, do you want to regenerate? So that's its prompt to say, regenerate, you want to do it again? And every time it's a different iteration. So that's interesting too, that it has so much language in it now. The database is so huge. It's devoured so much work. It can now do a completely different iteration of that original sentence. So again, it's referring to that sentence that I originally gave it to it, that he woke in the morning and went outside to feed the horses. He, with a sense of purpose, woke in the morning and proceeded to go outside, where he meticulously attended to the task of feeding the horses, their patient demeanor attesting, sorry, the images are on there, attesting to the rhythmic harmony of their shared routine. So a completely different sentence structure and different language coming into it. So the other thing you can do, as you note here, I can take all that's happening on ChatGPT and cut and paste it and put it in a different document. So I can save each version of these sentences and pick and choose. Again, if I'm stuck and it's like, I don't know how to describe these horses and I need some brainstorming, some fire to get going. And, maybe I like the patiently waiting part and I take that. Okay. And then, or I could just do write 5 different versions of this sentence. I gave it the same sentence. He woke in the morning and he went outside to feed the horses. And it gives me 5, each one different. And I could say, give me 10, give me 20, and it will do it for you. And you can go through it and see if there's some language you like that resonates with you. Again, you're the final editor. It's just, again, kind of being a copy editor or someone line editing for you. How about this sentence? How about this sentence? So brainstorming, blog post, plot, and more. So now we come into more of the content development. So let's say you're a blogger who writes for writers and you're stuck, you have a topic. The topic for the blog post is, I just made this up, how to write with abandon. So one thing you can do to make sure ChatGPT is understanding what you want, you can say, do not start writing yet. Do you understand? And then watch it kind of get its feet on the ground here. Yes, I understand. Please feel free to provide any specific guidelines or information you'd like to include in your blog post about writing with abandon. So just like I was doing with my synopsis, I gave it the information I wanted it to work with and the guidelines, like please reduce this to 3 sentences, please now 4 or 2. If you have particular questions or areas you'd like to focus on, let me know, and I'll tailor my responses accordingly when we start working on the content. So here we get, before writing, you can ask any other further questions, and it will remember the purpose. So here I gave it a blog post. It could be for your website. It could be a magazine article you're working on about, writing with more style, whatever it is you're doing. But you want to first make sure, okay, are we on the same page? Do you understand what you're going to start generating and what I'm trying to work on? Okay, so then I gave it content. Write an introduction for this Writing with Abandon blog that includes the following: Jack Kerouac's automatic writing approach, W.B. Yeats' trance writing, the surrealist automatic writing, and note how automatic writing creates a spontaneous, free-flowing experience. So that's all I gave it, right? Like, this is what I want the blog post to be, and I want you to write an introduction for me to see how it looks and see what you come up with. First of all, it gave me a title. Note I didn't ask for a title, but it was generous enough to give me one. Unleashing Creativity, Writing with Abandon. In the tapestry of literary history, I think it did pretty well, first of all. Certain writers have dared to dance on the edge of convention, transcending the boundaries of structured prose to embrace the wild, untamed realms of creativity. Jack Kerouac, the pioneer of the beat generation, waltzed with the spontaneity of the moment through his automatic writing approach. W.B. Yeats, in his trance-induced scribblings, sought inspiration from the mystical and the otherworldly, while Andre Breton, a surrealist maestro, surrendered to the magic of automatic writing to unlock the subconscious. Now, notice, I just gave in the prompt the Jack Kerouac and trance writing and surrealist. And from this database, it knows other things about, Jack Kerouac was part of the pioneer of the beat generation. I didn't give it to it. I didn't give that information, but because of its huge database, it knows it. Now, I don't know if I'd call Yeats's trance-induced writing scribblings. I would change that. I change a lot of it, but it's pretty good. And that Andre Breton is the leader, the founder of the surrealist movement. I didn't say that, but it knows it. It offered that up. So just pointing out what it can add and expand. And it goes on. In this exploration of writing with abandon, we delve into the liberating techniques that these literary mavericks employed, witnessing how their methods birthed a torrent of words, unbridled and uninhibited. It's a journey into the heart of spontaneity, where words flow like a river unleashed, creating a tapestry of thoughts that defy the constraints of structured composition. So that's all its creation for an introduction. I think it went on a little longer. Join us as we unravel the secrets of Jack Kerouac's free-flowing prose, the trance-induced narratives of W.B. Yeats, and the automatic writing style of Andre Breton. It goes on and on. Note, I put a little note, you bring the subject matter expertise to ChatGPT via the prompt. You could have listed all the things you wanted it to include in the introduction for your blog or magazine article in bullet points that you want it to write from. So I wrote it in just a sentence form, but you could just give it here is the list of things you need to cover in the introduction, dear ChatGPT as you're busy creating. And good luck. Other prompts that you can use, and again, I didn't do all of them, but I started kind of making a list, and I'm going to show you the number one. As for the middle section, please ask me questions to help write this part of the blog. It's an interesting thing it can do. Write 10 headlines for the blog post, Writing with the Bandit. And then you can have a prompt, turn it into a Twitter or Instagram post. So again, it can compress. It's really good at compression. Turn it into an email subject line. Again, like I showed you with the novel. And after you write the article, you could put the whole article in there and say, cut it by 25%. So you only have 1,000 words, and do not omit information of substance. And it will follow that as well. So if you're on a tight deadline, excuse me. I used to work for a newspaper and we had a 3 o'clock deadline. It's like, you need to cut this by 500 words. It could do it. And again, with that information of don't cut anything that's substantial, it can follow that as well. You can input the entire blog that you've written into the large language model and ask, what keywords should I use to improve the SEO? And that's interesting. You can ask it, maybe write the whole blog and say, can you make it more casual, more energetic? And that would probably be verbs, more professional or more funnier. So, and you'll have to judge if you like its humor or not, because sometimes it's not that funny. So I did the middle section for this blog, this Writing with Abandon. I said, as for the middle section, ask me questions. So I went chat to kind of act as a developmental editor for me. Ask me questions to help me write this part. Certainly, to craft an effective middle section for your blog post on Writing with Abandon, it would be helpful to know more about your preferences and goals. Here are some questions to guide the development of the section, the middle section. So it gives me first focus and emphasis. What specific aspects of Jack Kerouac's automatic writing, Yeats's trance writing, and Andre Breton's automatic writing do you want to delve into? Are there particular elements or techniques within each approach that you find most intriguing or believe would resonate with your audience? Again, it just took its introduction and now delving into it. I haven't given it anything about the middle section. It's just thinking about it. In some ways, you're outsourcing thinking. Now that's a good and bad thing. Application to the writing process. This is more brainstorming it's doing for me, or asking me the questions as the writer of how I want to frame this blog or magazine article. How can writers incorporate the principles of automatic writing into their own creative process? Are there specific exercises or prompts inspired by these authors that you would like to share with your audience? Overcoming creative blocks. How can Writing with Abandon be a remedy for writer's block or creative stagnation? Are there anecdotes or examples? And it has balancing structure and abandon. How can you find a balance between the two as a possible thing to write about? And then encouraging experimentation. How can writers step out of their comfort zones and experiment with writing techniques that promote abandon? Again, these are all things I could have sat, in my room alone and done more reading and research and kind of written a rough outline of what that article would be about. But here I have some questions going in if I want to do more research and start planning kind of a structure for the whole article itself. Through its questioning, and now it's asking me questions. And then one more. Are there specific challenges or exercises that encourage writers to embrace a more uninhibited approach? So anyway, so then I tried, it's not that good at short stories. I put one, I'm writing a short story about a young girl who discovers a portal in her closet. The portal leads to another world. Write 5 plot points. Certainly, here are 5 plot points for your short story. So it's a little expected, a little bit in the cliche, but it can do this. And it would be up to me then to, this prompt wasn't detailed enough. So I'm going to take the blame for it. It gives, the mundane day, it names the girl Lily, just has an ordinary day. And then the discovery, she discovers the portal, she crosses over. That's the next part of the story. She just gathers the courage to go in. It marks the beginning of an extraordinary adventure. And then she'll have challenges and revelations. In her new world, Lily encounters challenges that test her courage and resilience. She makes unexpected allies. See, it's very generalized because my prompt was pretty general. I didn't name her. I didn't say, what I wanted her to discover. Are there any other characters in this story? I'm thinking how I could flesh out the prompt. And then the decision. So this is a traditional arc, though, a traditional structure where we have a inciting incident, rising action, and then some kind of, revelation. As she delves deeper into the mysteries of the new world, she realizes that her presence there is no accident. She faces a crucial decision. So here's our climax: whether to stay and fulfill a destiny intertwined with the fate of the fantastical realm, or return to a mundane life. The story leaves readers on the edge, pondering Lily's choice and the potential consequences. So it kind of ends with a check-off ending that's open-ended. Which will she choose? So again, I'm going to take the blame. My prompt wasn't very detailed. So if I'd given it more, it could have elaborated more and made more specific. But there's kind of a outline, a blueprint of how the story could go. The other way to use it, or the other way I've used it a lot, is research. Now you can Google all this stuff. So I was, I'm writing a new novel. It's like, and someone owns a beauty parlor. It's like, well, what is in a beauty parlor? So I just asked ChatGPT, name 10 things you'd find in a beauty parlor. I wanted the accessories and what do you call the, hairdryer thingamajiggy. I didn't know the names. And then a friend was doing a story about a police investigator, and she wasn't sure, well, what does a police investigator do at a crime site? So in the old days, before Google even, you'd have to, I remember calling around. When I wrote the Translator, I had to call around. I interviewed 9 different translators to figure out, how do you translate literary work? Well, potentially ChatGPT could help you with that research and put that question in. And given the huge database it has, it could potentially at least get you going. And the new thing is, it's also, you can ask it, what cite your sources? So that's been a big problem with ChatGPT and the large language models, because it's so large and it scrapes so many things, including things with false information. It often makes mistakes. So one thing you could start doing, especially when you're doing research, is ask it to cite the sources it's looking at. So I've been able to do that with a couple queries recently. So I think it's a new evolving aspect of ChatGPT. Again, I'm not privy to how they're changing it, but it seems to now and then when I ask it to give sources, it does it. So that might help solve that. So here I wanted to just kind of summarize things I've been pointing to along the way, just to point them out more. Oops, let me go back to my prompt writing summary guidelines. So write to ChatGPT as if writing to a person. So you don't have to use any special code or any formal language. The more specific the prompt, the better the response. And clearly defining what you need is the best. So I'm writing a letter, I'm doing a query letter, I'm doing research, I need 3 paragraphs. That specificity will help the output and improve the quality of the output. Ask and re-ask if you don't like the answer. So as you saw, a couple of times I had to refine the prompt or ask again. And it's, if you keep that page open, meaning you start your, let's call it a conversation with ChatGPT or whatever large language model you're using. Once you start the conversation, leave the window open. You can keep going for a long time. At some point, I think I've, stopped. I get tired after about a half hour, and then I stop. But I know some people, I go farther, and it gets a little confused after a while. Like if you're on hour 2, like what am I referring to again? So I said that if you keep the page open, you can ask for sources. And again, no, it will make errors, and you don't rely on it. Like you've probably all read about the lawyer who had ChatGPT write a brief and it made up case law. So that poor associate must have been really tired because he didn't double check and see if those case laws actually existed. And the other caution is don't put sensitive information in the prompt. At this point, we don't know, and I don't know where all the prompt information is going. And my guess, because right now I'm using it for free, it's all going back into the large language model. So anything I'm putting in there is fair game for them to feed their large language model. So you don't want to put, any financial information, any company, intellectual property information, anything like that into the large language models, because now you've just given it to the big companies, OpenAI, Google, whoever, they've got it now. So those are the kind of the summary or guidelines as you go forward to put it in some kind of form. And then remembering it's a tool, right? It's just a tool, and you can use it as much or a little as you want. I know a lot of writers are finding their way through it and figuring it out. So that is what I have to say. I want to open it up to questions, and maybe you've used it, and what have you discovered, and how have you, made it better, refined your prompts?
Thank you so much, Nina. I really appreciate it. And I will say that I'm sure we're going to get a lot of questions in the chat, but one of the things that I know I wonder about is I've heard the whole notion of asking it to cite its sources. I guess you have to check those as well too, because so that could technically be made up, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
yeah, I would definitely not rely like, oh, this came from this. I would double check that, go to Google. So once you get into, factual information, like when it fed that Andre Breton was the Surrealist master, I know that's true, but I would double check it rather than just weave it into your article if that's what you're going to do.
Right.
Definitely.
So, and just to confirm, the ChatGPT that you're talking about is 3.5, or I understand that there's a paid 4.0?
Yeah, paid is 4. So if you're going to use it a lot, and ChatGPT 4 also has, a lot more to it, like plugins that can actually, you can give it commands to go do something on the internet for you. Again, I'm not in that realm. I'm just playing around with it to try to figure out how, as a writer, it can help me. And also, I think every writer is trying to figure out the ethical line, right? Like, okay, it doesn't feel like it's written for me. It's stirred up some ideas for me, giving me some language I like. I'm still going to continue editing and working on it. But I'm just working with the free version. And if you can log in via Google or whatever, anyone can use it right now. And like I said, they're keeping it free because you're helping to train their model. It's a reciprocity. They're getting something from it.
Yeah. I love that you started this and showed that this is for writers of all kinds, right? People who are writing market copy, people who are writing letters to agents. I think that's super important for all of us in publishing to understand that this is a way to really help us. I think that there's also, especially among people who are sort of full-time writers, is this cheating? Is this somehow, this is more of an ethics question than anything else. What is creativity? You have to sort of define that. And what makes it mine, right? What makes it my spark of creativity versus what is it from the ether? And of course, on some level, all pieces of creativity come from not only sort of our brain, but also the ether, our experience. And so it's a way of, in some ways, expanding our experience, I suppose, is one way of looking at it, by including the experience of how a machine is interpreting the experience of the world as it's gathered in under its umbrella of stuff. I don't know if you want to comment. We're getting into some big issues here, but I guess it's really to address that whole notion of like, should we even be playing with this if we're writers? Is this going to detract us from what we wanted to be originally when we were writing?
Well, I think it's a very individual decision, but I want to give some models of how we are using external apparatus tools to help with creativity. I write on a computer, and for me, it feels like my mind, because it allows me to, write and rewrite really quickly, and then backtrack and go over it again and move forward. Writing by hand is too slow for my mind. It doesn't feel right, but even that's a tool, right? Writing with a pencil and paper. So I think that we're new. This is new. And so ChatGPT feels like it's raising the question of ethics, and is it still mine? But if you start looking at, I know writers who hire developmental editors. So a person, right? Can you read my short story? I'm hired to read short stories and make it better. Give me suggestions, just like I did with basically what ChatGPT with the middle section, all the questions it raised, like, how are you sure you want to leave it here? Or don't you want to give examples for the writer on how they can use automatic writing? So I'll do that in an editing process as I edit someone's work. So I'm not a machine, but it is an externalized tool. I am being paid to help someone write better. So, but it's a line for everybody to negotiate and figure out for themselves. I have an app on my phone. I think it's called Hippo, and it's full of synonyms, and I love it. So whenever, it's called Word Hippo. And so I'm stuck on a word. It's like, oh, I've used that word so many times, and it gives me thousands of synonyms and antonyms for a word. So I'm on this app trying to get a better word. So I feel comfortable with that.
Yeah, and your point is a good one. It's a thesaurus, right? Is this a new version of a thesaurus? And
it is, right.
We always turn to thesauruses,
right.
And all that kind of thing. Yeah.
But I'm interested in what if writers are out there, other writers that are negotiating this or saying, there's no way I'm ever going to use it. I've heard that, I've seen that online, I'm not going to touch it. And I know writers that have, are flowing their whole first chapter in to see if they can up their language. As publishers, you should know this, that maybe they do, they're on the 5th draft. I have a friend on the 5th draft. She put her whole chapter in section by section to have ChatGPT make the verbs stronger, for example. So it's more of a collaboration, I guess, at some level. And again, you have the ultimate authority, like, oh, I don't want that word. I don't like that word. I'm not going to use it. But just stirring it up again, like getting out of the confines of your own system and your own default words to come up with new words.
Do you think that we need to, for instance, if we take something that ChatGPT comes up with, and someone commented on this in the chat, they were talking about one of the responses like amazingly good, and was that just like stolen from someone? Should we be checking to see, or does ChatGPT know not to kind of take something? And it's hard to determine, right? Like what is yes. fair and what is not fair. I mean, we covered this a lot in publishing about what is fair use and not, and that's a very amorphous thing. What is fair use for a poem is very different than long prose. But do you do that? If you took a whole sentence or a whole paragraph that ChatGPT came up with, would you like Google it or use something to determine, like, I'm not accidentally plagiarizing someone, am I, if I've used this?
I mean, the whole fair use copyright is the US Copyright Office is looking at it right now in terms of AI. They don't have an answer. Nobody has an answer in all the lawsuits that have been filed by authors. The retort or the defense is it's fair use because it isn't an exact iteration. It's an unsolved question, right? So as someone, I would use its output to then generate my own response. So maybe take, like, I like some of the language, like just the early dawn with the faint light. It's like early dawn. I hadn't thought of describing morning as early dawn or something. Maybe take a piece of it. Do I think it's exact word for word? I don't know. I haven't I know Margaret Atwood's work has been devoured by the LLMs. I haven't said write a paragraph in Margaret Atwood's style and then compared it to all her work. I guess you could then put that output into Google and see if it comes up with something and see if it's exact. My guess is it isn't. It's just using, the patterns that she uses. What ChatGPT is doing is looking at patterns, right? So it looked at Hunter S. Thompson's patterns language and predicting how he'd write this sentence based on that pattern. So I don't think it's an exact, I'm going to copy it from his work and use that because, he hadn't written that sentence that I originally gave the ChatGPT.
We've got someone who's raising their hand, so I'm assuming they're not putting it in the chat. So let me find them to unmute. Jim, you should be able to unmute.
Thank you. Such an interesting talk. Just wanted to throw out a couple questions. I'm someone that always wanted to do more with voice, like into my phone. I never got in a good groove with it. I know you said you haven't used the chat with the talking. If you could say a little bit about your suppositions about that. Secondly, if someone, just wondering about the corpus, let's say, I'm not sure if you're familiar with that very interesting like humanities and social sciences database, JSTOR. Let's say there's like some academic that's written 2 articles in the course of their life, and for some reason you're interested in not someone as famous as Hunter Thompson, let's say Joe Smithson or something like that. Would you be able to type, again, I'm just making this up, let's say he has like 2 articles in the course of his career in like literary journals or something like that are on JSTOR. Would you be able to say please pull up that person and tell me what they think about horses or something like that? Secondly, how would that work if you were interested in, let's say taking your biography or a biography of another character and putting it in there and saying, let's say you gave the dates, let's say they grew up in the years in the 80s and they were in Pittsburgh instead of in real life, they lived in St. Louis. Please write about how my biography or their biography would be different if they were in Pittsburgh. Just wondering on those different things. And I'd be super grateful if we could have a copy of the video. I'm so tired today. You said so many interesting things. If there's any chance we could take a look at the video again.
So
the video will be posted, by the way, and shared with everyone.
Thank you.
Oh, good. Okay. So the voice, I haven't used the voice talking. I know by mistake, now Word, you can have Microsoft Word read you your work. So there's some, if you Google it, it was starting to read what I'm writing a new novel. It started to read my new novel out loud. So there are free apps online that you load up your short story or whatever, and it will read it to you. So I direct you in that way. And I think the second question about the corpus and JSTOR, and I think can you pull up that person with, I don't know if he's only written 2 articles, did he make the database? Is he in the large language model or not? So that would be, it sounds pretty small, like just 2 articles and that's it. That it's doubtful whether they scraped up all the JSTOR. I don't know if they did scrape up the JSTOR. I know the large language models scraped up, GitHub, all the coding that's out there, Reddit, 170,000 books. But, then it's worth a try to see, just play with it, just see. And then I love your idea of putting in a biography of a character, and they, instead of St. Louis, they grew up in Pittsburgh, and this is the time frame, the 1980s. Name 10 things that would define this character because of the place where they lived. So then it has to pull up everything from Pittsburgh in the 1980s, what was going on historically, or what events happened during that time frame that might have affected your character. I think that's a really great prompt. Just at least to get a historical, how when you're writing historical, I guess that would be called a historical novel at this point in 1980s, people want to be immersed in the details. So, and like, what were the fads, the clothing fads? What were the toys? What were the things that people used in the 80s in Pittsburgh for this character? And you could just get a list. So there, instead of Googling all this, you could do it on ChatGPT and see what it pulls up. So, but I think that's a really cool prompt to try that.
Can you talk a little bit more about pitfalls, one that you've encountered or that you think people should be aware of as they use? I mean, you've obviously talked about, making sure that the facts are right and maybe getting it, especially around research or whatever. But maybe some of the more sort of on the creative ends of things that people should be on the lookout for.
Well, it's really it's a pitfall in a broad sense of the word, and that when I first started playing with it, my prompts were too general. And I see this with writers, it's like, oh, it's no good. ChatGPT is no good. And it's because the prompt was no good. So as I refined the prompt and gave it more information, its response became pretty remarkable. I mean, I'm pretty astounded at times what it does. So it was more, the pitfall was on my end. And, people say, well, I put in this prompt, a very general prompt, and it gave me this stupid answer. It's like, and I'm reading that online and thinking, well, that was a stupid prompt. So maybe looking at, refining the prompt. And also a lot of people stop. A pitfall is just stop after 2 prompts. Like, oh, it's not going to help me. Notice I kept going. Like, okay, that's not it. You need to be patient with it. And also that you are thinking like, what do I really need here? How can I frame this? It's almost like the right journalist question. How do I ask this person to get the information I need? How do I frame the question? So that takes sometimes some work on your part as the human part to pose the question in the way to get the kind of response that you need. So I try to illustrate that I didn't stop. So in the beginning, when I was playing with it, I'd stop too early, and it felt like, oh, this is not very valuable.
So in some ways, when it doesn't seem to be doing what you want it to do, that fail in a way is helpful to you, because it maybe prompts you to realize like, oh, here are the things that I didn't take into consideration that I really need to think about.
Right. So when I came up with that idea of writing with abandon, it's like on the early prompt, it's like, write an introduction about for a blog, writing with abandon. It was so general. It's like, I have to do some research. Who wrote from abandon? Kerouac did and Yeats did. And so then I added that stuff in, and it was able to give me a lot of language, but it showed me that I hadn't thought enough about the topic. I have to do a little legwork to make it more valuable. So it's not, I guess this goes to ethics as well. It's like you're doing some upfront labor, right, to even get the prompt to a point where you get something substantive in the end. I know Sam Altman in one of his blogs said that prompt writing is like its own kind of engineering. He compared it to software engineering at this point. And there's a whole new world opening up for prompt writers. Like they said, well, wait, they're talking about all the job loss, and the counter is, oh, there's going to be all this job creation. You can hear the little bit of sarcasm in my voice, but one is prompt writer. Yeah. Another, which I've told my students, I teach creative writing, do not take this job. Do not. They're hiring writers to help the ChatGPT produce better content. So it will give you an output, and the creative writer is going to help the story be better. And so say, no, it wasn't a good output. Here is the input that you should have. So they're hiring creative writers to essentially improve ChatGPT.
The last question I'll take can you give 3 or 4 sites to follow online that will fill us in on new updates and new AIs? I'm just kind of springing that on you. If you don't, it's something that we can think about and add when we send folks the link to the video, and we can add it into the caption of the video as well. But I don't know if there are things that you currently sort of either subscribe to or follow online.
Yeah, I will get that too. I have one that's really great, and I think it either comes weekly or bi-weekly, and it's very long. You wouldn't believe how much activity is going on in AI. Maybe you do, but it's like, these are the new developments. This is what's happening in medicine. This is what new businesses that are formed. So it's one that I think it's $50 for the year, but it's really worth it if you're interested in this area, because he's on Substack. He's tracking everything. So I'll get that to Dave and he can send that out. It's pretty amazing how much he covers and links to everything. So this article will lead you here. So
Great.
I'll get that to you.
Well, thank you so much, Nina. It's really been, and it's clearly just the tip of the iceberg. And as you said at the beginning, it's really going to be evolving. And so the last question was totally great, because we're going to have to keep on top of this. And I will say that if folks want to join PPN, the URL is pubpronetwork.org, and you can send any sort of follow-up questions to this one to operations@pubpronetwork.org. I'll put that in the chat. And we're going to be having a conference this coming April on, I believe it's Friday, April 26th is what I'm going to go with. And I'm sure AI is going to be a part of that conversation. It's going to be, the theme for that is publishing for the greater good. And AI is obviously going to be a big player in everything coming up. So that's going to be a part of this. So thank you, everyone. And thank you so much, Nina. And we'll be sending those links out.
Okay. Yeah, I'll get the information to you. I also put my email in there if someone has a follow-up question at Gmail, and then my website. So thank you. And I encourage everyone to play with it. Don't be intimidated. It's really important to learn it so that this is not going away. So yeah.
I'm going to say it out loud. NinaSchuyler.com is your website, and that's NinaSchuyler.com. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for joining us.
Thank you.